And welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Hope you're doing fantastic out there. Everything is now set in the NBA play-in scenarios as the Golden State Warriors lost today. They lost to the Los Angeles Clippers in an OT thriller, 124 to 119. Jimmy Butler, pretty fantastic performance from him. He finished with 30, which I believe is the most that he's had as a Golden State Warrior, but unfortunately also took a knee to what looked like his lower quad above the knee area from Kawhi Leonard, who was driving to the rim, and didn't look like it was feeling too fantastic. And the Warriors now dropping into the play-in in spite of having a super Jimmy Butler record all this time. They have let up based on the Steph Curry injury and some losses down the stretch, and especially that back-breaking one this week to Harrison Barnes in their building at the buzzer. The Warriors find themselves in a place where they are now back in the play-in with Jimmy Butler, who will find himself in a very familiar place, which is having to be in the play-in scenario, as is his former club, the Miami Heat. We know that Miami is going to be taking on the Chicago Bulls. And if you're wondering why those are the first two teams I'm starting off with, well, all of the draft chips kind of lay in the balance of this week and where Miami is going to land, as in if they will have one draft pick, two draft picks, no draft picks. It's all there for them. It's really, really a weird scenario that Miami is going into this thing with, because to start on their own business, before we get to the rest of the matchups in the East and West, Miami, of course, has to beat Chicago this week to move on to take on the winner, or take on the loser, of Orlando and Atlanta. Atlanta and Orlando are going to play on Tuesday, with Orlando as the visiting team, with Atlanta as the visiting team to Orlando. One of these things I'll get right in this open. And that'll be at 7:30 on Tuesday. Whoever loses that advances to the next play-in game, and they will await the winner of Miami-Chicago loser leaves town match. If Miami is able to win that game, then Miami will lose its first-round pick, and that pick will head to OKC. If Miami does not advance to the play-in, then Miami will then be in the NBA draft lottery and ergo keep their pick. From the Miami Herald, this is what they say. The Heat are going to enter the May 12th NBA draft lottery with a 2% chance of landing the top pick, which will assuredly be Cooper Flagg, and a 9.4% chance of landing a pick in the top 4. They are slated currently, if they stay in their spot, to pick 11th. They could go, I believe, as low as 12th if a team behind them leapfrogs them. That would knock them down a peg. But Miami right now, as of today, is slated to pick 11th. If Miami does get their pick this year, and I think some of you are familiar with this, then OKC gets their pick next year. It is unprotected, and so does Charlotte for the pick 2 picks from now in 2028 for the Terry Rozier trade. So Miami would be in that case if they make the playoffs, where they will just handle that over to OKC, and then OKC will get that pick this year, which it could be, like we said, it could be in a top 11 pick. If it goes to, if Miami does make the playoffs, it'll go up a little bit. OKC will get that pick, but it will not be as high, and because of that, the pick will go to OKC. So that's what Miami's looking at right now. But it's obviously a crazy scenario. The OKC thing would then clear up Miami. They would have their own pick in 2026. And then, of course, the possibilities if they make the playoffs, they could still get the Golden State Warriors pick. So they could get picks for the next 2 years. and be done with their protections of the OKC pick and handle that obligation, but they would still have the ability to get the Golden State pick should Golden State make the playoffs. Now, Golden State is sitting here in a scenario where they are going to play the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies obviously have gone through their own little tumultuous end of the season here where they have fired their head coach. We, of course, were subject to a 3-game win streak that they were on where Ja Morant hit a buzzer beater against the Miami Heat. They did play a pretty good game against Golden State just before that. But then after that, of course, Ja Morant has the whole scenario where he's firing the gun at the bench. The NBA fines him $75K, and then he comes up with this genius celebration, which I am a huge fan of, which is the grenade toss. And I got to tell you, when we come to this game on Tuesday against Golden State and Memphis, I'm not worried about picks right now. When that comes in, trust me when I tell you, I am throwing on my helmet, okay? This puppy is going on. We are going to be suited up for what we need. And I'm telling you right now, dude, I am going to be pulling the pin in that grenade. That is what I'm going to be doing once we get to Tuesday night with the Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors. Trust me when I tell you my Team Petty is in full swing for this one, and I am going to be Team Ja Morant all the way. And I think that would be almost the fun scenario of all this because I think Memphis can beat Golden State, especially if Golden State is a little bit banged up, which would be funny from a Petty standpoint because, you know, it was interesting when this whole thing happened. I was like, I don't know. I'm not feeling the Petty towards this Golden State thing as I normally have. I almost feel like I've lost my fastball. Then the Heat Golden State game happened, and it really reinvigorated me. But look, I'm definitely going to be rooting for the Memphis Grizzlies. And then part of me really is like going to be looking at this next matchup if they fall to the 8-9 loser or the 8-9 or the 9-10 winner. One of these days I'll get the play-in scenario, right? And then I'll be like, you almost don't want the chance of them getting lottery balls because then you could end up with no first-round pick this year if the Heat are able to make the playoffs somehow and the Warriors are able to get into the lottery and then end up top 10. There is a chance that the Heat could not get a first-round pick this year. But also, it would be pretty hilarious if the Golden State Warriors had this whole dog and pony show, had this incredible record, only to end up with the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round. And you know how that's going to go. That's going to go top hats and monocle style with how OKC's been playing this year. But I got to tell you, man, Golden State's got to be there's no way they're not a little bit worried. I mean, they're already bitching about all the minutes everybody's playing and how they're not getting enough rest, and they really played balls to the wall in this game to try and get it done. They couldn't against the LA Clippers. Kawhi Leonard, you know, as he usually does, gets the best of Jimmy Butler, and now apparently going whole Jorge Masvidal flying knee into his leg. Man, I don't know how Jimmy's going to recover from that. That's going to be an interesting one for sure. So those are the things that we are monitoring. It is going to be a very consequential next couple of picks, next couple of playing games for the Miami Heat, where, yeah, they could end up with their own pick if they get blasted by the Bulls, which we have seen is very, very possible. It's odd to me, though. Like, I feel in you know, talking about this, I think with a lot of people today around the building is like, I am more nervous about the Heat's ability to win this game against Chicago than I am against either Orlando or Atlanta. And quite frankly, knowing how Miami and how spunky they are, even the first couple games of Cleveland, just as we saw against Boston last year, Spo can game plan you up and he'll make you look competitive in a series. And I think that there'll also be a little bit of I think if the Heat were taking on Boston again, I think there'd be a little bit of like, all right, we know how this is going to probably go. We've faced them 100 times. They're going to go bombs away. We won't be able to keep up with their shooting. And I'm not here to tell you that I think the Heat could beat Cleveland. I don't want to be patently absurd, although you know how I get. But I definitely think in those first two games, the Heat, if they're able to get through these and get a little momentum going, could they be a live wire to put a scare? That's kind of just their style, is it not? And I'm very curious to see what that matchup looks like in Miami. But that's assuming that they can get past the Chicago matchup to begin with. And Spo kind of gave voice to this of saying like he was happy that these last couple of games were against run and gun teams and guys and teams that like to push the pace in the Wizards and New Orleans. And I get it, but I kind of feel like that's insulting to Chicago. Chicago's been playing good basketball, and they've just kicked Miami's ass. It was at a time this year where I thought that was one of the more humiliating losses of the season, and I thought Miami was just taking its eye off the ball. But look, when you see the same result 3 times, obviously you have to look at that team and say that that team has got your number. So it's definitely something that Miami has got to have a real grasp and handle. They're not going to practice on Monday. They'll be full go of it on Tuesday to get things right. I'm a little concerned still with Andrew Wiggins' status. I mean, he hasn't looked fantastic in his return from injury. It's a hamstring. You got to stay in front of a fast team in Chicago, and I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know the status of Pelle Larsson. Maybe we'll know more in practice, but obviously he's put a jolt into Miami a little bit. Not having him is going to suck. And, as far as like everything that they would need to beat them, you kind of feel like you need all hands on deck to beat this Bulls team that's just had your number this year. It's been a rough go of it. So really, really interesting couple of days here lining up for the Miami Heat and Golden State Warriors as far as where Miami's pick's going to land. Can the Warriors avoid disaster and, not go from everybody's sneaky title favorite to old team breaking down? And what does that mean for Miami and their draft status? I think all of that stuff is really, really fascinating. And then on the other side of things, just, kind of giving a rundown of the other playoff series, New York, Detroit. I'm a huge fan of Detroit. I know they've kind of been the trendy upset pick to see if they can get it done. I definitely think that could be a scary series. I still feel like New York with the home court advantage, not knowing how the Knicks will, how the Pistons will necessarily react to atmosphere there. But I also think that, sometimes it's a little bit more wine and cheese than you think, the Mecca. But they have a lot of firepower. I'm a big believer in what Jalen Brunson can do as a playoff performer. It's Cade Cunningham's first chance to get out there. And they're ornery. I think the thing that they do best that would serve them if they're going to do it is, probably get some technicals, get it ugly, muck it up, and try and push the Knicks around a little bit. I think that's probably their best method. Milwaukee and Indiana. Indiana is obviously the deeper team right now with everything Milwaukee's dealing with on an injury standpoint, but they got the best guy in Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's been just putting up monster numbers. But even when they've been full strength, I feel like Indiana's kind of had their number. So I don't foresee any upsets there. I think the one that's the most intriguing on the West side of things is the Lakers in Minnesota, because, the Lakers have kind of been everybody's darling, and yet they're not that far above everybody. Like they haven't made this vast leap. They've kind of come back to earth, especially after LeBron got banged up a little bit. And Minnesota, on the meanwhile, kind of closed pretty strong after a pretty ho-hum start of the season. And Ant-Man, the kid is just a jolt of lightning. He obviously can shoot the lights out. They have size still with Reed and Gobert's ability to rim protect. There's not really a matchup that LA can bring with it, but LA, has the dynamic duo here. They have the tandem. You do have a rookie head coach going into his first playoff series, and while everybody thinks a lot of JJ Redick. It is going to be interesting to see, like, all right, you're going up against a true veteran in Chris Finch. Like, how does he adjust to that? I think Minnesota is going to upset him. I think like that. If I'm looking at like, here's what way I would look at it. I think if I look at the 4 series that are set right now, that's the one to me that I'm like, I think that they could get it done. I think that they could get it done just based on what Ant can bring to the table, all the tenacious defense that they can bring. And just, I think the Lakers at their peak and best, they could handle Minnesota, but I still wonder if like that's all going to be there for them. So like that one, I'm just like, all right, do I feel more likely that Detroit upsets New York or Minnesota upsets the Lakers? I'm going to go Minnesota just because I feel like the West is a lot more even with Detroit, playing pretty damn good basketball for the most part this season. And a very, very impressive year by them, and they've caused the Heat a lot of heartache. And then Denver and the Clippers, like I don't really even consider that an upset. Those two teams are literally even. They have the same record, so I think the Clippers will probably win that series just on all the things Denver's going through, them seeming miserable. They got Joker. Obviously, that's a huge feather in their cap. Kawhi looked really good today, and I don't know. They're not your average 5 seed, so I think picking the Clippers to win that series isn't really picking an upset because they're basically the same team. It's not really going out on a leap. But I'm excited, man. This is a fun field, and this is going to be a very interesting week for Miami because we are going to learn not only the fate of this particular team's future, but we're going to learn the fate of a lot of it. And, is Pat Riley going to look, I know I've done a lot of Warriors talk on this, and I feel like I've, not oversaturated it since the whole drama settled down. But now it's like genuine consequences that have to do with the Heat and what's going to be with their draft pick. And then also the ramifications of, look, Pat Riley didn't want to pay Jimmy Butler until he was 37 years old. And I raised my hand and I said, hey, you should have. So I'm going to look like a dummy here, which I'm fine with because he's gone now. So I'm good looking like a dummy. But Pat Riley's bet, remember when I told you a couple of weeks ago when it was looking, the Heat were in the midst of their worst losing streak in Spurs history and the Warriors were just cruising, couldn't lose. And I said, with all this stuff going back and forth, this public PR battle, I said, the best thing for the Heat to do right now, front office-wise and league-wise, is just shut up. There's nothing you can do right now. Just hope your bet's right. Hope it ends with the Warriors, not with the trophy. Now, it could end up looking even better because the Warriors, who at one point looked like it may be a threat to the Western Conference Finals, and we'll see, things can flip on a dime in the playoffs. But if the Warriors end up getting beat by the Rockets, getting smoked by the Thunder, or heavens to Betsy, end up not making the playoffs, and you're just in year 1, you're not even in the Jimmy Butler extension, then yeah, Pat Riley's going to look loud right. And yeah, there's a Kuminga trade that they could make somewhere, but come on, dude. Those are no spring chickens that they got on those teams. So whatever they want to say about keeping Jimmy happy and giving him that money, which we know they were hesitant about, that was a bet on this year. And they put in some chips to make Jimmy as fat and sassy as possible. And I understood it. Like, you got to do right by Steph Curry. They're kind of in a no-lose scenario because his legacy is set. But if it is going to smart if they don't do anything in the playoffs this year, and then you're expected the next year. Plus, it already seems like they pretty much isolated Kuminga and made him the scapegoat and didn't play him today, and they still lost. Going to be interesting. Going to be very interesting in a week where we can find out the pick scenario, the ramifications fully of the Jimmy Butler trade, what the Heat are going to get from the Jimmy Butler trade, and really, did the Warriors make I don't want to say a colossal mistake, because trading for Jimmy obviously was the right move at the time because their season was lifeless, but is it going to sting for them to bite the bullet on having to pay Jimmy Butler $60 million a year the next couple of years, and you don't make it any kind of a run in year one when he's at his youngest and really his freshest? So monster week for both teams ahead that were involved in a blockbuster trade.